This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
It's already challenging enough because in reality, you're dealing with mortality, with death of a loved one, someone you love so dearly that helped raise you and make you who you are in so many ways. And that will oftentimes just emotionally flood people to the point where it's really challenging to navigate these other realities like the finances of it.
Caring for aging parents or other loved ones while working, raising children, and trying to live your own life? Wondering how to find the time for your personal health and happiness? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Caregiver Podcast, the show where real family caregivers share how to be happy and healthy while caring for others. Now, here's your host, family caregiver and certified caregiving consultant, Elizabeth Miller.
Tuning in to the Happy Healthy Caregiver Podcast, which is part of the Whole Care Network. If this is your first time listening, I am so glad you're here. This is a show produced bi-weekly to help family caregivers integrate self-care and caregiving into their lives. Does your company have employee resource groups and prioritize employee wellness? If so, you may want to let them know that I offer an annual corporate support package that includes educational webinars, a caregiving panel, monthly group coaching calls, and more. I'm excited that employers are starting to get that working family caregivers need their support. And this support also benefits employers as it's expensive to attract and train new employees, and supported employees are more productive and present. In the show notes, I'll link to my speaker page, which includes a speaker demo video. If your employer likes what they see, they can use the Contact Us page to reach out. I'd like to thank our episode sponsor, Rare Patient Voice. Do you want to earn cash in exchange for your opinion? Rare Patient Voice, or RPV, helps connect researchers with patients and family caregivers for over 700 diseases and conditions. For patients and caregivers, RPV provides the opportunity to voice their opinions to improve medical products and services while earning cash rewards. Rare Patient Voice, helping patients and caregivers share their voices. If you're interested, join the RPV panel at rarepatientvoice.com/happy healthy caregiver. For this episode segment of What I'm Reading, I finished a fiction read called The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. People love this book since it has an average rating of over 4 stars on Amazon and Goodreads, so maybe I was in the minority. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. Part of the book gave me this Willy Wonka type of vibe where a group of people are going to a spot, in this case an island, to compete for a prize in a game that's being masterminded by a reclusive author of popular children's books. It's a modernized story with a focus on a main female character, Lucy, who desperately wanted to foster and hopefully adopt a child. It's a bit predictable. There are some sub-stories of forgiveness and definitely perseverance, which I enjoyed. And I did like the riddles and the clues so that I could play along. And we'll say that the narration that I enjoyed on the Libby app was also terrific. So I will link to the book on Amazon so that you can check that out if that sounds like something that would be an interesting read for you. My favorite thing this week, if you want to elevate your home coffee experience, I have a favorite product that I have been using for years, and I still love it as much as I did on day one. It's called the Espresso Arrocino, I think I have the version 3 milk frother. Basically what you do is you put your desired milk in and you hit the button to make it steam and froth if you want it warm, or if you preferred cold foam, then you can hold the button in and it'll be cold. The favorite thing may also save you money, as you'll find that you're just as happy, if not happier, with your coffee at home. I love that I know exactly what's going into my coffee. There are newer versions out there that are a little pricier, but I'm going to share the one that I use that retails on Amazon for about $75. So I will link to that in the show notes. Let's meet today's caregiver in the spotlight. Meet family caregiver Jason Van Den Brand, who managed end-of-life care for his grandmother and father over an 8-year season. This experience led him to start his own company, Wellahead, which helps families get matched with the best way to pay for long-term care. In this episode, we talk about how Jason managed care from a 3,000-mile distance, how his family paid for long-term care for his family members, why millions of dollars in veterans benefits for care goes unused, why you shouldn't wait to use long-term care insurance if you have it, what to avoid when paying for care, how owning your home provides long-term care payment options for consideration, and how his family values posted in his office inform how he celebrates his personal successes. Enjoy the show. Welcome, Jason, to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to dive into our conversation and unpack your caregiving story and what you have to offer for caregivers. But we also always like to get people's thoughts on some wisdom from the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. So let's see what we got here today for you, Jason.
Okay.
All right. It says, individually, we are one drop, but together we are an ocean. And that's from, I don't even know if I can say this guy's name, Ryansuke Satoru. He's the father of the Japanese short story, but individually we are dropped, together we are in an ocean. How does that relate to caregiving for you?
Ooh. It's kind of like parenting, I would say. It takes a village, right? Even as I've thought about my own caregiving experience with my late grandmother and my late father, it takes a village. My mother, my uncles, my brothers, everyone was involved, aunts, uncles. And so you
Nice.
definitely need that community to pull these miracles off.
I love that you say community. I think it's important that we have community too. And sometimes caregiving can be very broad, and we can have community too. And if you're a young caregiver, if you're a male caregiver, sandwich generation caregiver, working family caregiver. So try to kind of navigate resources on Happy Healthy Caregiver with helping people kind of fast track to that community beyond their friends and family so that people can relate what they're going through. So thank you for that. And then just to the point of it takes a village, like I have yet to see a solo caregiving situation work. It's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. So, and I can share some thoughts on that in a post that I wrote recently. I'll link to that. So share a little bit about your caregiving story, Jason. Most of us don't choose this to happen to us. So how did caregiving enter your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably start you off with a stat. 70% of Americans' net worth is locked up in home equity. And so at Wellahead.co, we vet and then we compare hundreds of financial providers to help pay for things like in-home care, trips to and from the hospital or the doctor's office, and even day-to-day bills. And so you just mentioned this, but I've spent 20 years of my life now building financial technology companies. And when I had to navigate end-of-life care for my late grandmother and my late father, there was no single place to help figure out where and how to pay for their healthcare needs. And millions of Americans are experiencing the same exact challenges every single day.
Yeah, let's unpack your story a little bit though, too. And we'll get into Wellahead, of course, when you say that you helped with your grandma's and your dad's end of life responsibilities, what kinds of things did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was being in California and my family was outside of the Philadelphia area. It was a lot of red-eye flights, a lot of long-haul flights across the country, a lot of last minute, quickly, driving to the airport, frantically calling United or any airline to get on a flight as fast as possible. It was easily one of the most challenging experiences of my life. And grandmother, super close to her, trying to figure out how to get in-home care, bedside care for 16 hours a day,
Wow.
how to close for 5 months, how to close the 8-hour gap because she needed 24 hours of care. And then very importantly, how to pay for it all, which is, part of why we started Wellahead. It's,
Yeah.
80% of people are going to need long-term care at some point in their life. And
Yeah,
my
there's no escaping it.
yeah, and it's just such a high percentage. And what I realized in my experience, and a big reason why we started Wellahead, is that it's really a multi-generational challenge. And we just talked about community a second ago. It's tough to talk about. And so, my company, Wellahead.co, we think of ourselves really as a conversation starter for families. So we start with basic questions, simple questions. Do you have long-term care insurance? Did you or a spouse serve in the military? Do you qualify for Medicaid? Do you own a home? And what we've learned is that for the first three questions, 25% of Americans are going to have their care or via those benefits. Some of their care, hopefully all. But for the rest of us, 75%, which included my family, if you own a home equity turns out to be the best next path to pay for care. And so when you think of home equity, everyone always is like, oh, reverse mortgage. And what we found through our company is that that's actually the third most utilized option now, behind products like the home equity investment, which is no monthly payment. An investor will buy 10 to 30% of the property. And then second is the home equity line of credit, the HELOC. You do have a monthly payment, and think of that like a large credit card secured by the home. And then
Is that
finally,
like the same thing, Jason, as a second mortgage?
yeah, HELOC is a second mortgage.
Okay.
A second mortgage will be you get the money all up front, and a HELOC is like a credit card, so you can kind of borrow as you go, but you do have a monthly payment. And then third is the reverse mortgage, and that has the lowest interest rates of the three, but has the highest fees. And so for me, with my grandmother, figuring out how to pay for care, again, we didn't have a single place to go and figure this out. So we ended up getting a reverse mortgage for my grandmother. So I had to, again, with all those long haul flights, I had to navigate the financing side of things and then work multi-generationally with uncles and my parents and all these types of things to get that secured. And then once you have it secured, then you have to go all the way full cycle back to, well, who's providing the care? Do you trust them? My cousin had to quit her job to help close that 8-hour gap overnight. And then the family was all in arrears because they said, well, why would we pay her to do that? Where's that money coming from?
Yeah.
So like,
how is she supposed to eat and prepare for her future? Like, that's the thing when caregivers quit their jobs, is they're basically putting themselves at risk for their own long-term care down the road. So we want to try to expose the options that they have to pay for long-term care, where they can also keep working and investing in their future needs. Like, we're all going to probably even live longer than this generation is typically living. So it's smart. I'm curious, like with grandma, thankfully she owned her own home and you had that option, right? But would you have done anything differently?
it's such a great question. I've unpacked this. She passed on Christmas Eve of 2018. And,
Sorry.
I've had the better part of now 5-6 years to reflect on that entire experience, which led me to start Wellahead.co in so many ways. And I don't think I would have.
Okay, good. Well, and even if you would have, like Jason, like I tell family caregivers, like we make the best decisions with the information that we have at the time. So we have to give ourselves grace. Like sometimes we learn a lot like later and we're like, oh, I should have, could have, would have, but it's so hard, as you said, to navigate that. And you're living 3,000 miles away or something like that from your dad and your grandmother. So, that's rough. That's rough. And before we leave that remote topic, like, what advice would you have for, sons and family members that are trying to navigate remote caregiving? Like, is there some tips that you give, or like things that you're like, oh, this was amazing, this really helped me?
Yes, back to community, back to your village, back to your support network. It's understanding who's involved, understanding who's not involved. understanding who can provide what,
Mm.
from from actually being able to show up and provide care, because as in the sandwich generation, and how much time do I have to be in Philadelphia area before I have to get back to my job and my family, and then who else can step up, and then very importantly, how are we going to pay for all of this?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, okay, it's already challenging enough, because in reality you're dealing with mortality, with death of a loved one, someone you love so dearly that helped raise you and
Mm-hmm.
make you who you are in so many ways. And that will oftentimes just emotionally flood people to the point where it's really challenging to navigate these other realities, like the finances of it. And
Yeah.
so how do you kind of take a step back, hopefully be able to take one deep breath and be able to coordinate and facilitate amongst family members and friends and loved ones across really challenging topics like who's providing care, what kind of care, and how do we pay for all of that?
Yeah.
Who can provide time? Who can provide resources? And back to your earlier point, which is 100% correct, so many people take part-time roles or
Yeah.
all the way to quitting their jobs to provide care. And that decision should not be made lightly. It is a downstream consequence to their own family, because the reality is, more often than not today, it is the sandwich generation that's taking on that burden. And no one knows how long this caregiving is going to be required.
That's right. There's no
Not,
crystal ball on these
even
things.
not even doctors know. It's a guess. And so they can tell you, hey, like for my father, it was pancreatic cancer.
Mm.
That's a terrible sentence to get. And you think and you read the studies, and the doctors tell you, well, hey, it's going to be a few months. That's, make sure you get your kisses and your hugs in.
That's horrible. Yeah. I'm so
Three,
sorry.
3 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they were wrong in a good, and maybe in a good way. Like,
Thankfully, and thankfully.
yeah, yes. Although we definitely, sometimes the quality of I say your prayers can sometimes change. Like, you want longevity, and then sometimes you're like, maybe I don't want longevity. I just want this person to be at peace. But having those courageous conversations, that's what I call them, is really important with your family members. Did you do anything different to pay for dad's care than you did for grandma's care?
We didn't. My dad worked in a hospital, and fortunately, he had some benefits through the hospital to help pay. Um, and for a moment there, my brother was living in Philadelphia, so he was able, and was a student also studying nursing. Uh,
Okay.
he was able
Let's
to
hands-on experience there. Yeah.
hands-on experience and transport dad to and from. He was getting his care at the hospital, University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. So being able to pick him up, take him back and forth as he was weakened, over time
Mm.
from the chemo and the radiation. And so no, short answer, no, we didn't have to do anything abnormal like we did. And I wouldn't say abnormal. It actually turns out it's very normal.
Yeah.
But we were able to support him. And I think a lot of that, honestly, as I look back on it, was just luck
Mm.
in a way, because now my brother would not have been able to do that.
So
And
timing is like everything.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I
get
had
it.
I had a flexible schedule myself comparatively at that point, and so being able to fly back and forth to Philadelphia and spend extra time and work remotely myself at that point to be able to kind of flex in and also take dad to and from the hospital. I was there when he finished radiation treatment and got to ring the bell in front of
Mm.
all the angels, that otherwise known as nurses, that helped him along the way, and went into remission. And yeah, sorry, I'm getting choked up, but yeah.
Yeah, good. No, I mean that's listen, I like leak on I call it leaking in every conversation because like you think you're over some of this stuff and then it just kind of like takes you back there. And I mean, it'll be 10 years since my dad passed this
Mm,
year. And my mom passed in 2020. But yeah, it's just like just even saying that. So
mm,
um, I know you're big onto in the financial world, like you've got, your fintech companies, your finance degree, now Wellahead.co is your business. I can't tell you how many deer in the headlights looks I've gotten from family caregivers when they learn that
Medicare, which is health benefits that people age 65 and up, older adults receive. Doesn't have to be needs-based, just it is that, triggered at an age point. Like when they learn that it doesn't pay for long-term care and that it only does short-term care, like that is a hard conversation. And I'm not a financial planner, a lawyer, anything. So I'm just trying to help people kind of navigate to the next thing. And of course, I will definitely mention your resource as an option. But you asked the questions in the Wellahead wizard. I kind of went through the website a little bit, and you mentioned a couple early on, like, do you have militaries, things because maybe they'll qualify for veteran benefits? Are they on Medicaid, which is like the financial needs based stuff, the long-term care insurance, and you ask about their home stuff and their life insurance. But most people, I find that like they do feel like they don't have a lot of options besides private pay. But are there any other options? Or you talked a lot about the home equity being something that maybe it sounds like maybe it's underutilized.
I think it's taboo in the country to think
Why
of
is
home.
that?
Home is personal. Home is where the heart is. And, so we look at what we call the circle of care.
Okay.
And obviously these healthcare providers, whether it's in-home care, whether it's assisted living, whatever the situation may be. And then there's wealth. There's your CPAs, your financial advisors, your registered investment advisors. And then finally there's legal, which is your estate attorneys, elder attorneys, and they all have a place in this world, this circle of care. And they all come in and out depending on the family's situation. The reality is that only 3% of Americans carry long-term care insurance. It's really a product that has been reserved for the haves.
It's so expensive. Like it's
It's
not an option for the
really-
Millers, I can tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not alone. And then on the flip side of that, you mentioned Medicaid. Medicaid is for the have-nots. It's a welfare program, and your net worth as a family needs to be, on average, it's different by every state, but on average, $8,000 or less in order to qualify for Medicaid. So there's
Is
not
that 8,000 or less? Is that a year or
total. No,
total?
$8,000 in net worth.
Net
Total.
worth. Yeah, like I always scratch my head. Like we have a huge wait list in Georgia for Medicaid. Last I heard, I think it's like 7,000 people are on the wait list for Medicaid. And like we tried to get my mother-in-law on Medicaid. I think we were denied like 8 or 9 times. And she had something ridiculous, like a $900 maybe a Social Security check, like, and basically like a used car. And then she kept getting denied. And I was like, if she gets denied, who gets approved for this? Like, I was just in shock.
Yeah, and that's the challenge that we went through. I went through this with my grandmother to figure out. She also did not qualify. So, again, you got 3% have long-term care insurance. You've got 5% that qualify for Medicaid. And to qualify for Medicaid, you have to jump through all these hoops. Now, elder attorneys help plan for that, but that's also typically something that's reserved for the haves. So we have this weird juxtaposition. There's everyone else in the middle. Now, in the middle, you've got folks that have served in the military themselves or their spouses, so they qualify for benefits. So we just went to a conference here in the Bay Area about a month ago, and we learned that for veterans benefits, there are 8.5 million veterans that qualify for long-term care benefits. 8.5 million. And today, only 160,000
What? Are taking advantage of it.
are actually receiving those benefits. 8.5 million qualify, 160,000 are receiving it. Now, here's a true story. My grandmother would have qualified, and I didn't know. We, as a family, our village, our community, did not know. Why? Because there's no single place for Americans.
And they're not advertising it, I'm sure. Like,
Anyone, they're doing the best they can, but
yeah.
it's government, it's complex, it's hard to find it. It's like doing your taxes. It's, it's messy. So, again, with Wellahead, if Wellahead would have existed when I was going through this process with my grandmother, That right there, those benefits that she would have qualified for, veterans benefits, which 10% of Americans do qualify for,
Mm.
older Americans qualify for based on service. It would have saved the family upwards of $80,000.
Wow.
$1,000. And now think about it like this. My cousin quit her job.
Mm. Yeah.
That money, and then the family is kind of infighting to how to pay her. Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
Right. And then you got medicines, you got all these things that add up. And so we're really, as Americans, and to be fair, it's not just America. I was just in Japan last week. It's one of the oldest countries in the world in terms of aging.
Mm-hmm.
This is a major problem there. It's a major problem in Europe. It's a major problem in South America. This is a worldwide phenomenon. But here we are in the United States, got 350 million people, and our most of those people are going to be over 75 years old by the end of this decade. And so
Yeah.
how do you go
I
about
just I
for
just
it?
saw a new stat since you look like for a long time it was 10,000 people are turning age 65 every day, but I just saw in AARP magazine that it's now 12,000 a day are turning age 65. It doesn't necessarily mean that aging is synonymous with disease, but it does, increase the level of sometimes the needs there. So interesting, like you're about the veterans benefits. I mean, is the place to go to find out about that? Like if you have something, a military experience for your spouse or yourself, like to go to the Veterans Affairs, or like where's the place to go for that?
We've brought it on to Wellahead, and
Okay, perfect.
that's why we asked that question. So remember, it's, do you have long-term care insurance? And if you answer yes to that, we say, go and file a claim. You paid for it. You should go and get that money. You should go and file
Not
that.
wait for it, because I had that conversation with someone recently. They're like, well, we don't know if we're going to need it later. I'm like, but then I know people who waited and then they don't get the benefit of that. So do you say use it when you need it?
I say if you've got it, use it. And you just, there's so much uncertainty in this life, in
Cross
this
the
world.
next bridge when you get to the next bridge. Yeah.
If you've got it, I would say use it. And then the second question we ask is, did you or a spouse serve in the military? If you answer yes to that, we then have these providers on the wellahead.co platform that will help those families navigate all the paperwork and the time that it takes to
Okay.
file the paperwork and then wait to get the money. On average, it takes veterans 3 to 4 months before they receive the first money to pay for long-term care. And so we've partnered with companies that will help shorten that time cycle. We've vetted them, no pun intended. We've vetted the veterans
Yeah. Right.
providers
Yeah.
to make sure that they're taking care of our cherished older Americans, and then they will help them get the benefits that they rightfully earn. They served in the military, or their spouse served in the military. And so collectively, we really want to help close that gap between the 8.5 million Americans that qualify for veterans benefits and only the 160,000
That
that
you're
are,
using them. Yeah.
8.34 million Americans today could be getting these benefits.
Wow.
Right. And then again, third, do you qualify for Medicaid? If they answer yes, we say yes. We're going to direct them to the right resources. And then finally, do you own a home? Now, the numbers are a little jarring because, again, long-term care insurance, veterans benefits, and Medicaid, that only helps 25% of people. That's the small part of this pie. 75% are not going to get that help. 80% of those older Americans, 80% of them actually do own a home. It's the highest home ownership percentage in the entire country is older Americans. So and they think, oh, again, oh, I don't want to use home equity. It's a reverse mortgage. Well, again, reverse mortgage is the third most utilized. There's the home equity investment, there's the home equity line of credit, then the reverse mortgage. And very importantly, and this was my experience with my grandmother, Wellahead didn't exist. So what did I do? I did what everyone else did. I picked up the phone and I started calling the local banks. The first bank that we called, they gave us the terms for this reverse mortgage because that was all we knew. We didn't know about the home equity investment. We didn't know about the home equity line of credit.
You didn't even know to ask about it. Yeah.
We didn't know that they qualified
Yeah.
for veterans benefits. So, okay, reverse mortgage is the answer. The first lender that gave us the terms, okay, thank you. We really appreciate it. I'll get back to you. I pick up the phone, I go to the next bank. The delta between the terms was night and day.
Interesting.
It was night and day. And so, again, if you're
You're
just
shop, you have to shop for it, just like you shop for a car and shop for a
yeah.
house, everything.
And,
Yeah.
and this is a phone call where I'm leaking, to use your term.
Yeah.
Crying, Grandma, I'm
It's
sick.
emotional. Like you're trying to do
Really
this,
emotional.
navigate it, but it's also emotional, and you're in a crisis situation. Like it's yeah, it's a we want to help, other people avoid this.
Yeah.
I love that I love not that you went through this experience, but that you've used this experience to inform and change and do something positive for
Yeah.
that. And with Wellahead, and that you are vetting them, right? Like you say on the website that you safeguard families from using predatory practice. What does that mean? Like in just layman's terms, like what does that mean?
I mean, if you think about it like this, in my experience, I picked up the phone and I'm in this, emotional state, and the first lender gives me terms. And had I not had my financial background, I probably would have said, great, let's do it.
You trust,
And
especially if it's
because
your bank. I've been using the same bank for years.
yeah, it wasn't our bank. It wasn't our bank. It was a local lender.
Mm,
And then fortunately I went to the next one that had way better terms. And so, there is obviously an issue in this country and worldwide where certain financial providers are going to prey on the weak, right? On the people that need help the most, they're going to potentially
yeah.
take advantage. And so we take it upon ourselves at wellahead.co to interview them. We ask them things like, show us your rates, show us your fees. How many customer service agents do you have that are trained to deal with emotional transactions like getting money to pay for care for older Americans?
Mm,
How many states do you operate in? How long have you been in business? So on and so on and so forth. We have 32 different checklists that we put them. We put them through the
nice.
ring.
Good.
So that now come back to my story. Here I am. I'm picking up the phone. Instead, we want people to have one place to go to that's already done that phone picking up thing. And the people that you actually then work with, they're not the ones that are trying to take advantage of you, because we've already shopped them. We've already made
Mm,
sure that they're in par, like in the market of how much is it
nice.
cost. And then we bring that transparency to the family so that they can make the best decision and avoid what almost got us. And it
Do you
gets,
give a couple options, like so
yeah,
that
on average, the people that we're working with, and we're talking about thousands of Americans now that we've worked with, they're going to talk to, even on our platform, they talk to two providers,
okay,
shop and compare even between them, and make sure that they're getting the best deal.
good.
Now,
Okay.
it's not going to be night and day. It's going to be like 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., but
Yeah.
take 7 a.m. It's a
It's
low.
always good, I think, to have a couple to bump
Absolutely.
up against each other, and I know the initial wizard process, I'm going to call it. You probably have a more sophisticated term, but the questions is free. But you are an entrepreneur. You've got a proven record with fintech companies. How does Wellahead make money and stay in business? Like, can you be transparent about that a little bit?
100%. I mean, transparency is one of our core values. So this is completely free. Wellahead.co is completely free for every single American out there. You can go and visit the site, wellahead.co. There's no M on the end. That's one thing that trips people up. Or you can just stick it into google.com, and you'll
I
find
like
well.
the name, by the way. It's like it
Thank
is
you.
what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're trying to help people.
Stay well
And
ahead. Yeah.
go ahead. And so we get paid by these financial institutions that are on our marketplace. It's a very, very small dollar amount. And think of it just as a referral fee.
Okay. Like a lead generator. You're basically, they didn't have to go out and find these people. You vetted them, you're selecting them, and then you're saying, hey, here's a qualified client that could be good for you. And you've saved them so much marketing and all that. So for that service, they're paying you
That's right.
well
And
ahead.
our goal is to build a trusted relationship with the family. And so, as you know, as we know, it's typically the oldest daughter of the family that's
Mm-hmm.
navigating these end of life circumstances and caregiving circumstances. They're making the biggest sacrifices. I'm the oldest of three boys, so it, fell on my shoulders here. The term has been volleyed around: alpha daughter, oldest daughter, daughter Judy. Everyone has a different term for this, but that's the relationship that we really are building trust within at Wellahead, and
So
who,
important.
while we serve older Americans, that's who we're here to help. We also work with families to help them figure out best way to pay for care for their loved ones, and what are their own financial needs. How do we actually help the entirety of the country? Because again, I just went through this for grandmom. Dad passed in between that, then grandmom passed. And I sit here and I look at my two children. I have a 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. And I think, well, boy, I really want to make sure that they don't have to go through what I went through.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm here as well. Like you just want to make it easier and different, and trust is everything. So thank you for your transparency, because I will say, like, the caregiving world, like if you get believers and the family caregivers, like they are the best referrals for you. Like they are going to tell their friends and be like, this is what helped for us. Like in those support group meetings and things like that, you will have loyal following, forever when you take care of family caregivers. Is there any bad ideas when it comes to paying for care?
Try to avoid using credit cards, I would say.
Okay.
I think that's the number one thing that people tend to do, is use credit cards, and it's a real slippery slope. Interest rates on credit cards are over 20% on average. Then suddenly you're paying that back, and you borrowed a lot
And
of
the
money.
stress of that, like that's keeping me up at night. Yeah.
And when you look at the cost of care today, I mean, these numbers are going to blow your mind. I know you know it, but
They're going to blow
the,
someone's mind. Yeah.
it's the cost of care is today close to $8,000 per month.
Yeah.
$8,000. By the end of this decade, by 2030, it's going to be closer to 15,000. So it's nearly going to double from today. The
Wow.
average length of care that people need is upwards of 18 months. So do the
Yeah.
math.
That's actually less than I've heard. The average caregiver is a caregiver for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Is kind of one of the stats. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a huge problem, and I've lived it, right? My mom in assisted living, and I'm grateful that my parents, you said the have and the have nots, they were on the have spectrum, where my dad had sold his company and he had invested well. But we, dwindled away that nest egg, and it didn't take a whole lot. We would have to have meetings with their financial planner. Like, if we keep spending what we're spending, how long are we going to be able to make that? And, now that my parents are deceased, it's the siblings and I sharing the care. If I have a brother with an intellectual and developmental disability who needs care and is not, employable. So he gets SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, and sometimes Medicaid. That kind of varies. He's a snowbird. He lives half the year in Michigan, half the year in Georgia, which is also interesting. But we are having those conversations again. Like, can we, he's 60 years old. How are we going to pay for his long-term care? We're all getting older. We need a backup plan that if we're, our village is not the way it is. So the conversations are always out there, but the important thing is to keep having them. And I'm not like you, Jason. I don't have the business acumen. I'm a broadcast journalism major. Like, I could write you a really nice cover letter or anything that you want, but finance is definitely not my thing. So, another.
I'll add another one, and
Yeah.
this comes up a lot. Remember, I talked earlier about the circle of care. So you have
Yes.
healthcare providers, you have wealth, you have legal, right? Those
Okay.
are who come in. So healthcare providers, obviously, they're providing care, right? No matter how you slice and dice that, they're providing care. And they get paid for it, and that's the job, and that's what we all do. And then, well, hopefully, because we all know there's this whole big slug of people that are unpaid caregivers.
Yeah.
We can come back to that later.
53 million in the US and more. Yeah.
So now when you talk about wealth, right? So another thing that people don't think about when they're comparing options. So you mentioned financial advisor, financial planner. So people will go and actually liquidate stocks, bonds, such, things like that,
Investments.
investments to help pay for care. Well, when you do that, you're now going to have a capital gains tax. The average federal capital gains tax is 20%. And depending on where you live, which state, like in California, California also charges upwards of 10% capital gains tax. So here's the example. Let's put some real numbers out there now. You need $100,000 to pay for care, and that's probably on the low side, but it's a round number. You're in a position as a family where there's an investment portfolio that has $100,000 in it. You also are in a position where mom, dad both owned a home that has $100,000 in equity. What should you do?
Yeah, great question.
A financial planner will tell you, typically, much to the chagrin of elder attorneys, I'll come back to that, to liquidate the $100,000 in investments. Elder attorney says that's nonsense because they're thinking about taxes and tax planning. So unless you've got a network of CPAs, financial attorneys, financial providers, elder attorneys to all be looking at the thing at the same time, more often than not, you're going to liquidate that investment and then you're going to get a tax bill for $20,000 to $30,000.
Wow.
The alternative was to go and liquidate some of the home equity that you have. You're not going to pay $20,000 to $30,000 in taxes if you do that.
Right, right.
So while we talk a lot about haves and have-nots, long-term care insurance to Medicaid, when we talk about everybody in between, which again is 75% of Americans, they own a home, they have some investments. The most common thing people do is liquidate the investments. Well, before that, they use credit cards. So I would, if anything, please
don't do that. Yeah.
You have to take into account liquidating investments, paying taxes versus using home equity. The net result is the same. At some point, like when my grandmother died, everyone thinks, oh, we want to keep the home. We want to keep the home. The number one thing that the heirs to the home do is sell the home.
Right.
Sell the home.
I think sometimes, like you said it earlier, like there's an emotional thing of that. My parents actually own 2 homes, and my mom would never even approach the conversation of selling one of the homes. But to your point, like as soon as she passed away, we knew we could not maintain both of them, keep both of them. We sold one, and my sister bought the other one. So we actually sold 2, I guess, technically, because my sister bought it. But it's it's complicated. I think to your point, like you got to kind of look and put your arms around all of it and make sense out of it, And then I think another thing that I hear financial related that people ask, and I've seen people do, and I'm like, ooh, probably not a good idea, is that they, but again, not a financial person, is should a family caregiver add their name to mom or dad's bank account? Like they do it, I think, because it's easy, like to do it. But I have heard that could potentially be putting them in jeopardy for Medicaid and other government services down the road. So better to get a power of attorney, a financial power of attorney.
I think this is why elder attorneys exist. Everyone thinks they're going to cost a ton of money. When you compare what an attorney costs, which everyone hears attorney, they think, oh my God, that's so expensive. Well, compare that expense to the attorney to what not being able to qualify for Medicaid is going to cost the family. And 100 times out of 100, the attorney cost is less. And so again, at Wellahead, that's why we're partnering with home care providers, assisted living providers, registered investment advisors, elder attorneys, to collectively bring in all of the complexities that come into play here into one place so that when families are navigating end-of-life care like you and I both have, and millions of Americans, it's 5.5 million Americans today, every single year are going to go through this. And that number is obviously going to be going up. And so where do you go to find the right answers based on your own specific scenarios, your own personal financial, your own tax issues? That's what our technology is building. That's what we help solve for. And that's why we exist, to help older Americans and their families figure out the best way to pay for this needed care.
So good. So good. And is there anything that Wellahead doesn't do? Like, is there anything in the financial realm that you're like, oh, that's not really what we do?
Yeah, if back to the wizard that you call it, the questionnaire.
Yeah.
If you select yes, that you have long-term care insurance, we're not going to help you file your claim.
Okay.
you select yes, that you served in the military or your spouse served in the military, we are not going to be the ones that actually help you with that paperwork. However, we do have providers on our network, on our platform, on our marketplace that will help you. So we will make those connections. So I'd say the only thing we're not doing as it pertains to this is helping someone with long-term care insurance. We're not going to go and create
Yeah.
a relationship with
Just be
your
like, hey, go do this. Yeah.
yeah, but we're going to give them the guidance because
Yeah.
it's the right thing to do.
That's
Like,
smart. Yeah.
all the more reason that we need to exist. Because I'll give you another example. Back to my story. If I call up that first reverse mortgage lender for my grandmother, number one, they're not going to ask us if we have long-term care insurance
Mm,
or if we qualify for veterans benefits or if we qualify for Medicaid. Why? Because they get paid a commission to sell
yeah.
mortgage. That's their job. That's what they get paid. And that moral hazard is subconscious. They're not bad people. They're not doing this on purpose. It's just that's their job. That's what they've been trained to do.
Yeah. Makes
This whole
sense.
analogy of hammers and nails. Well, they're the hammers and we're the nails. So, as we thought about building Wellahead, we're not a lender, we're not an investor, right? We're here to serve people and compare all of them to each other so they can make the best decision.
Yeah. One other question about so after someone puts the questions in Wellahead, you're serving up, or you're like concierge kind of serving up the options. You're not taking their information and giving it to all of these people so that these folks get bombarded with emails. And
Yeah, I'm glad you brought
that would be miserable, by the way.
that
Please
would be
don't do that.
miserable. No, no, we don't do that.
Okay.
So we get the information, and then we do have a concierge team that will actually get in touch, typically with the oldest daughter of the family, the older American, whatever the case may be. We'll actually get in touch with you, however you want to be get in touch with. So
Perfect.
a phone call. If you want to email, that's fine. We also text. And all we're going to do is just confirm the information that came in, get a little bit more of an understanding of, hey, what's the situation here? And then we're going to make this recommendation and
Okay.
provide guidance of, okay, based on your situation, based on everything you've just told us, here's your options. And transparently, here are not your options.
Right.
And why? Right?
Nice.
So that way, then we go back to this vetted financial provider list, hundreds of financial providers, so that instead of you having to deal with 100 phone calls from all of them, if you put your information into the wrong website, you're going to have 2 phone calls and you're talking to the right 2 people,
Okay.
right
Good.
products that are best for your situation. So we think of it like a filtering exercise,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. I
again,
mean,
because if you think of the person that you and I were those people, we're sitting there, we're emotional, we're vulnerable, we're dealing with very difficult situations with family members, caring for our loved ones, we're flying to and from across the country, we're tired. And
yeah.
then on top of that, we have to go and figure out how to pay for it. And that's the reality for every American.
Yeah.
So that's the worst time to be having to get 100 phone calls on top of what you're already dealing with, or
No.
100 emails or 100 text messages. Let's narrow that down to the best 2. And that's where
Perfect.
and then also that concierge team is available. So as you're going through the process, you're talking to these 2 providers that we've narrowed it down for you. You have additional questions, you come back to us. And guess what? It's not a robot. It's a human. It's a real person.
Amazing.
It's someone right here in this country that you can talk to help you through this process. Because again, look, you brought up your quote at the beginning of the podcast from the jar.
Yes.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm.
This is the necessity that as I kind of sat there crying my eyes out, going through this reality that my grandmother's gone, my father's gone, everything that I had gone through, all that emotion, everything I had done, everything my family had experienced, the not getting the veterans benefits, the, almost working with the wrong lender that would have cost us more money, all these things bubbled up. Well, this is what we need. This is what our country needs. So here we are, and we're inventing it to bring transparency, to bring awareness to all these financial products that exist today, veterans benefits, whatever the case may be. There's a finite amount of ways to pay for it. Hopefully, again, if we can do anything right here, you just don't pay for it with a credit card, because that's just a terrible
Yeah.
thing.
Don't do that. But I'm curious, and if you're willing to share, like, what have you done to set up um, your family for your future long-term care needs?
I don't know yet. I'm on the road to find out.
Okay, that's an honest answer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Necessity is the mother of invention. So here we are.
yeah,
We're learning. We're figuring out just like everyone else. Okay, here's the options. Here's what's out there. Should I go to my family budget and try to figure out how to pay for long-term care insurance? You mentioned it's really expensive. I'm on the road to find out. I want that answer. And
yeah, go
if I
get
get
it.
that answer,
I found
then
that over the age of 50, it like I'm 52 now. So, but we did go see an elder law care attorney. We have all of our ducks in a row. We put our home in a trust.
yeah,
That was another thing that I learned from my parents of like how easy it was when they passed away to kind of avoid probate and to do all of those things. So I wanted to have that the word what I had heard or learned is that if you own your own home, that's something to think about is to put it in a trust. And I'm grateful for my brother's trust, the special needs trust that gives us a lot of comfort in caring for him for sure. So, well, we've got to switch real quick because we're going to run out of time, Jason, but I got to ask you about your self-care. You're a busy entrepreneur. You're got this company that you're growing and helping people. What do you do so that you don't burn out and that you prioritize your health and happiness?
good question. I exercise.
What kind of exercise? We're being nosy.
Yeah, I have this machine called a tonal.
Hmm.
It's like Peloton for strength training.
Okay.
So I try to get on that thing about 3 times a week.
Nice.
I mountain bike to get my cardio. I meditate twice a week, just for 10 minutes a pop.
Nice. Do you use an app or a program for that?
An app called Calm.
I love Calm. I use Calm. Yep.
Let me think. I'm trying to think of the facilitator's name.
Oh,
Tabitha.
Tamara.
Tamara.
Is
Yeah.
that, yeah, Levitz or something like that?
Tamara. Yep.
Tamara Levitz, I think is how you say it.
Uh,
Yes, her voice is just peaceful. I love a guided meditation because I will fill in the blanks if you don't kind of give me something to kind of focus on and do, whether it's a body scan or breathing. So
And
yeah,
then I do therapy.
nice.
Therapy, probably
Talk therapy.
talk therapy once every 2 weeks. Video. The therapist is located in Oregon. I'm here in Northern California.
Nice.
Um, and then, just I play with my kids. I go on walks with my wife after we get the kids down,
Nice.
just talk through everything and just try to, really take care of yourself. And, look, my life's not that different than anyone else. Like we're all going through our own challenges. We have our own issues. We're all dealing in so many ways. And then you get this curveballs of, hey, the phone call. Hey,
Yeah.
we need help. Or, hey, dad got diagnosed with cancer. He needs to go get the Whipple procedure. Right. And that stuff, you never know when that's going to come. And so, very importantly, I'm really glad you asked this question because, for caregivers, like taking care of yourself through all of this is really hard. It's easy to kind of let everything else absorb, everything that's there. And if you can just find 10 minutes to go and take a walk or do the meditation or
Something. Yeah.
do some air squats, do something to just kind of take care of yourself and be kind to yourself as you're going through this. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's millions and millions of Americans that are going through the same exact thing every single day. So, find that community, find that village. They're out there, talk through these things, have the hugs, have the cries, like lean on your friends, lean on your family. It's a really trying time. I've been there.
Yes. Oh,
You've been
you're saying all the right things and I don't even have to pay you. I mean, that's essentially what Happy Healthy Caregiver is all about is hopefully like fast tracking them to ideas. That's why I get real personal about the things because it's like, we'll try this on, like see how this makes you feel. Does it make you feel more energized? Does it make you feel like you're getting more peace of mind? Is it just plain fun? Like keep doing more of that. Now I got to ask you a question from the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. This is a book that I wrote that helps people prioritize their health and happiness because sometimes we do lose ourselves. Let's see. I'm just going to try to scan here and pick out a good one for you. I like that one. Let me look at one more. Well, I think this is a good one because you have had this, but how do you celebrate your personal successes? Like when you've built and sold your companies prior, and which I know that you've done, and maybe that's the future of Wellahead and you'll move on to something else. Like, how do you celebrate those successes? How do you celebrate the successes that you have?
I don't know if you can see on my backdrop here, but this is my family's core values.
I love that.
At the
What
very,
are
very
they?
top. So we've got give generously, practice gratitude, work hard, seek adventure, and think globally. And so what comes to mind when I think about celebrating is to give generously and practice gratitude. So number one, who can we give back to that helped us get here? Right. So, so many times you hear about the self-made person, the self-made man, the self-made woman. It's not real. It's
No.
had help along the way. So being able to give back in any way, if it's money, great. If it's not, it's time. So, helping other entrepreneurs that are coming up on their own journey, which is oftentimes very lonely, being
Mhm.
there for them, giving back. If you give a lot, you get a lot. That's kind of my life's mantra. And then practicing gratitude. So just so much gratitude for everyone and everything from community and all those that have helped me, my family, my
Nice.
parents, my brothers, my sisters, everyone, our community that have helped us get to where we are, to live this life. And it's short. And so when I celebrate anything, the milestones of life, it probably starts with those two. And
Nice.
probably, I'll probably wash that down with a nice glass of red wine.
There you go.
We live in Northern California, so wine is here. It's abundant. And we're my wife's birthday is this Thursday, tomorrow, actually.
Okay. Good that you remembered. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah, I'm ready. I'm planned. I'm good.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so we'll go and celebrate Friday night, a little wine bar locally, and have a glass of wine, clink the glasses, and again,
Nice. Yeah, as you should, as you should. Well, Jason, I've enjoyed our conversation. And are there anything else that you wish we talked about? And then how do people get in touch with Wellahead?
yeah, I think we've covered everything. So to get in touch with Wellahead, it's wellahead.co. Just remember the M is not on there. It's that one was it's not ours yet. It will be, I promise. And you can find us on the internet, just wellahead.co. And yeah, just again, I think what we've really tried to bring to light here is to help older Americans and their families just figure these really, really complex situations out, much like you and I experienced. Everyone's financial picture is different. Everyone's healthcare needs are different. Not everybody needs an attorney. Some do. Not everyone has a financial advisor. Some do. Not everyone is going to need in-home care or assisted living. There are other services out there. And the one commonality across all of it is what's the best way to pay for it? And so if you have long-term care insurance, you should absolutely use it. If you qualify for veterans benefits, you should absolutely use it. So on and so forth. If you own a home, it's another thing to consider. Wellahead.co will help you figure out the best path forward so
Nice.
that you're not dealing with 100 phone calls, 100 emails, 100 text messages.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything that you've made me, a smarter coach so that when I coach caregivers, I can help them navigate to some resources that help. And I just appreciate your story and appreciate what you do. So I'm grateful for our conversation today.
Right back at you. Thank you for all you do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network. As always, show notes that accompany today's episode can be found on my website, happyhealthycaregiver.com. Just look under the podcast menu for today's episode image, and that will take you to the page with the links and information we spoke about today. You'll also find other resources on the website, along with links to purchase the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. When you purchase from my website, you'll get a signed copy and for a limited time, free shipping. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider subscribing to the show on your podcast platform. It really helps other family caregivers find the podcast, and you'll automatically receive our bi-weekly shows in your podcast listening queue. Maybe while you're subscribing, consider leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just simply talk it up on your social channels. Let's stay connected. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Happy Healthy Caregiver. And until we meet again, please take care of you.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.